Everything you know about Thor is a lie. Hollywood sold you a noble hero, a protector, a saint of Asgard. But the ancient texts paint a very different picture. He wasn't just a god of thunder. He was a god of pure, unbridled destruction. And his own people feared him almost as much as his enemies did. Stay until the end, because the story I'm about to tell you is the one moment where Thor stops being a hero completely, and the sagas never let him take it back. Today, we strip away the myth and show you the real face of the god of thunder. Thor didn't choose the life of a warrior. He was born into a war that never ended. He was the shield of the gods. But being a shield means absorbing every blow, every trauma, every death, forever. Imagine that weight. Everyone depends on you. And if you fail even once, the world burns. Does that pressure build a hero, or does it slowly build a monster? Here's what the sagas don't advertise. Thor's temper wasn't a flaw in the story. It was the story. When he lost control, he didn't just win battles. He erased entire bloodlines. And the giants weren't the only ones who learned to read his mood before speaking to him. The other gods did too. Think about Loki, the god of mischief, the trickster. Even he walked on eggshells around Thor. Why? Because Loki knew that while he played with words, Thor played with annihilation. There's a reason for that, and it starts with a story most people have never heard. Long before the wedding hall, there was Hrungnir. Hrungnir was the strongest of the giants, a creature made of stone, with a heart of solid rock and a head to match. He'd wandered into Asgard uninvited, drunk on the gods' own mead, boasting that he could destroy the entire realm single-handedly, kill every god, and take their wives for himself. Odin, ever the calculating one, let him talk, let him posture, let him think he was safe. Thor did not. When Thor arrived and found a giant threatening his home, there was no negotiation, no trial, no debate among the council. There was only Mjolnir already in motion. The duel that followed shattered mountains. Hrungnir's weapon, a whetstone the size of a boulder, collided midair with the hammer, and shards of that stone are still, according to the sagas, lodged in Thor's skull to this very day. He carries a piece of that violence inside his own head, permanently, a god who quite literally cannot separate himself from the damage he causes. Even in victory, Thor was scarred by his own nature. But that was a giant who challenged him directly. Surely that's just self-defense. Hold that thought. Because what happened next erases that excuse completely. There's one moment in the sagas that defines him completely. It wasn't a battle. It wasn't a victory. It was a choice. A choice that proves he wasn't driven by justice, but by something much colder. Most retellings skip right past it. But this single event changes everything you think you know about his loyalty, his restraint, and what he is actually capable of. I'm about to tell you exactly what happened. Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, his one true source of power, was stolen, not by an enemy in open combat, stolen while he slept. The thief was Thrym, the king of the giants. He didn't just want power, he wanted to humiliate the gods. Thrym made his terms clear. Give me the goddess Freyja as my bride, and you get your hammer back. Freyja, the most beautiful of the goddesses, refused. She would rather die than be shackled to a monster. So the gods were cornered. They couldn't storm the giants' realm. They would be slaughtered without Mjolnir. They needed a plan. And they came up with one almost too strange to believe. They dressed Thor as the bride himself. Veil, jewelry, wedding gown. Sent straight into the giants' hall to reclaim what was his. Can you imagine the scene? The strongest being in existence, forced into the robes of a goddess, forced to play the part of a blushing bride, walking into the heart of his enemy's home. He sat through the entire ceremony in silence, waiting. Thrym was suspicious. He noticed Thor ate an entire ox and drank vats of mead, not exactly the diet of a delicate bride. But Thor stayed silent. his eyes burning with a rage he couldn't show yet. When the hammer was finally placed on his lap, as tradition demanded to bless the marriage, he grabbed it. The moment Mjolnir touched his palm, the disguise didn't just drop. It was incinerated by his aura. He didn't stop at the thief. He killed everyone in that hall, the groom, the groom's family, every guest who came to celebrate, not because they attacked him, not because they threatened Asgard, because he wanted his hammer back and mercy was never part of the plan. That's not justice. That's not protection. That's a god making sure no one ever thinks about touching what's his again. You think that would be the worst of it, the lowest the god of thunder could sink. You'd be wrong, because the way he treated his own people was, in some ways, colder still. Look at his relationship with his own kin. Look at the way he treated his servants, Thialfi and Roskva. In one story, Thor kills his own goats, his source of food, to feed guests. He brings them back to life with his hammer, but one goat remains lame. Thor is so furious that he blames the servant, nearly kills him, and drags him and his sister into servitude as penance. This wasn't a hero protecting the weak. This was a master demanding absolute, terrified obedience. The sagas describe Thor as having eyes like lightning, a gaze that made even the bravest warriors tremble. He didn't lead through inspiration. He led through the crushing certainty of his own power, and it wasn't only mortals who bent under that gaze. On his journey to the giant Utgard-Loki, Thor was tricked, humiliated, made to look weak in front of an entire hall of enemies. An old woman beat him in a wrestling match, a drinking horn he couldn't empty, a cat he couldn't even lift off the ground. Only later did he learn the truth. The old woman was old age itself. The horn was connected to the ocean. The cat was the world's serpent in disguise. He hadn't failed. He'd been up against forces no strength could overpower. But Thor didn't take that revelation as wisdom. He took it as an insult that demanded correction. So when he later found himself out at sea, fishing with the giant Hrungnir, and felt something enormous take his bait, he realized exactly what he'd hooked. Hrungnir, the world's serpent itself, the creature fated to kill him at the end of the world. He didn't cut the line. He didn't retreat. He hauled, with every ounce of godly strength in his body, trying to drag the apocalypse itself onto the boat early, just to finish it on his own terms. Only Hrungnir, terrified out of his mind, cut the line before Thor could land it. Some heroes avoid their fate. Thor tried to fish his out of the ocean and beat it to death there and then. That's not courage in the way we usually mean it. That's a being so consumed by the need to dominate everything around him that even destiny itself felt like a personal challenge. Thor's rage wasn't a defect. It was a necessity. Asgard needed someone willing to go that far, but necessity has a cost, and that wedding hall paid it in full. And so did every servant, every giant, every creature unlucky enough to stand near him when the anger took over. Compare that to Odin. Odin's cruelty was calculated. He would trade an eye for wisdom, sacrifice armies for knowledge, manipulate fate itself to stay in control. Thor never had that patience. He didn't scheme. He didn't wait. When something was taken from him, he simply took it back and burned down anything standing in the way. Maybe that's why the Vikings loved him more than they loved Odin. Odin was distant, calculating, almost impossible to relate to. Thor was rage you could understand, rage you might even recognize in yourself. We don't worship him because he was good. Maybe we worship him because we see our own darkness in his eyes, the need to break something, just to prove we still exist. We live in a world that asks us to be calm, to be patient, to be noble. But deep down, we all carry a bit of that storm. We all have moments where we want to pick up the hammer and settle the score once and for all. Thor is the embodiment of that impulse. He is the raw, untamed reality of survival in a world that is trying to destroy you. So is he a hero, or is he the most dangerous force the ancient world ever created? Don't take my word for it. Look at what happened in that wedding hall. Look at the way he treated his own followers. Look at what he tried to do to fate itself out on that boat. And ask yourself, would you have followed him into it? Or would you have been the first one running for the exit? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. If you want to understand the true nature of the gods, subscribe. And if you missed our breakdown on Anubis, watch it next. You'll see the connection.